So here's the final product. This is what we're going to be building, a tool that allows you to convert from one image file type to another image file type. So here I've selected JPEG and PNG because I want to convert this picture of a cat to PNG. And just like that, in a flash, in a couple of seconds, we have the cat picture in PNG. Now I'll be handing over to Victor to talk about the backend.
And hello there, everybody. Victor here for the backend side of things. In this project, we're using Firebase Cloud Functions, and we need this bad boy right here to get it going. It's called format, and it uses a simple onRequest trigger to decode request form data, convert our file, and respond to the client. We'll be using the Sharp library to convert images, and we'll be using the busboy library to take a look at the form data sent with the request. Let's look at how that's done. First, decoding the form data. We use busboy, as I said, and we're looking for that image file and one field called toFormat, which is going to be something like PNG or JPEG or GIF or GIF. And once we're done, we'll resolve that promise with set file buffer and the toFormat string. Okay, let's look at what comes next. And what comes next is this convert function, which takes that precise data, the buffer and the toFormat, and it uses the Sharp library to ingest that buffer, convert the image, and respond with a buffer. We need a buffer here because we want to write these bytes into the response body and send it back to the client. So let's look at how we respond. We take our response and we specify two headers. One of them is content type, which is going to be image/something like PNG or JPEG to get our browser to understand what image format we're working with. And then another one called content disposition, which tells the browser how we want to treat that incoming file. In this case, we want to treat it as an attachment, which will essentially tell the browser to download the file immediately instead of displaying it. And we also provide the file name with which we want the browser to save that. Then we use the converted buffer and we send it straight into the response body. Now that you understand these three simple functions, you understand the format function, and that's essentially all you need.
Now that the backend is finished, that's all the heavy lifting done, we can dive into the front end, and all front end begins with a good design. So in my designs, my tool of choice is Figma because it translates very well into React code and it's also very easy to use. Here I've defined some basic things like the typography, the color scheme, primary and secondary colors, and the general look and feel of the landing and uploading pages. This is a very, very simple design for a very simple application, but I still think that it makes life so much easier not having to think about fonts, colors, consistency, and so on when you're actually developing, and free up your cognitive capacity to just coding. Another thing that I really like doing is having a customer journey map, which deals with the interaction side of things. So what happens when a user clicks a button? Where do they get taken to? How do we display error messages? So on. Now I'd like to gloss over all the different bits and bobs that went into making this a reality. So here we have the index.tsx file, which has the navbar, the content, which contains hero convert. So the reason why I did it this way is because the navbar component just houses all of this fancy stuff and it has a specific height. But the issue that we're solving here is the fact that we don't want the content to be behind the navbar. So what we can do is we can just create a little wrapper component called content, which is just a div which has a class name of content. So if we head over to globals.css and have a look at content, we can see that the width is 100 viewport width, so it's going to be full width for any screen size, and the margin top is 60 pixels, which matches the navbar height, which has a position of fixed, which means that anything would normally be behind it, but now since we match the margin top to 60 pixels, that container box, that content box, will basically be right beneath the navbar. So the content houses the hero component, which is going to be this bit right here, and also the convert component, which is going to be this bit right here. So the hero component isn't very interesting. All it contains is just a bunch of text and a description of the service that we're going to be building, but the convert component is the more interesting one, which is what we'll be going into detail on. This is what the convert component looks like. At the beginning, we define a list of formats that Sharp can convert to and from by default, which includes JPEG, PNG, and so on. We define the actual component here, and one thing that we can notice from the design is that the only difference between the landing page and the uploading page is this content right here. So what we can do is we can define a circular progress, which is just a material UI component library spinner, or the actual content that we need to define if it's loading or not. This is one of the benefits of doing the design beforehand. Things like this become a little bit easier to code up. So now we can have a look at this component here. So convert options is going to be this bit here. So convert from format to format, and then this button here. So the way that it works behind the scenes is we have an input that accepts a file and accepts an image of the format that the user specifies. The button then, what the button does is it creates a form data object that it sends to the backend. It's all just forms behind the scenes, always has been. So if I have a look into convert options, all we're doing here is we just have a couple of click handlers. So handle from format selection, handle to format selection that actually set the from format and set the to format. And we have a couple of MUI drop downs. So if we navigate back to convert.tsx, we can explore in greater depth what on-file change and process file functions actually do. So on-file change gets passed down to a convert UI component, and the input calls on file change when a file is set. So here what we do is we grab the file from the event and we call process file. So process file is where all the magic happens. We call set loading true. And what that does is that we are showing the circular progress spinner instead of the actual UI, just as in the design. So instead of showing this bit, we begin to show a spinner. And then we just post the data using form data, either to the deployed cloud function if we're in production, or to the locally run version of the cloud function. So after we receive the response from the cloud function, all we do is just download it with this block of code here. And that pretty much finishes all of the functionality in Flash format.